Hey, so I've been thinking a little bit after the episode that had aired around pastors and snakes on I'm a Bishop. And I was just thinking around how it is that one has elevated the snake to this supreme position in spirituality. And I think with very little basis to do so, because snakes are common in the Middle East, as it were, and in that North African areas. So, if the story had happened in East Africa, for instance, maybe we would have spoken about different animals. So, it's very interesting for me that we take these characteristics of these animals and we then ascribe them to people. Jesus is called the Lamb of God. He's called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. The devil sometimes is the great deceiver, the serpent, and so forth. And I just think that, like I said during the show, there's avenue for us to also look at other animals, look at what they present, look at what it is that we can learn from them, because you'll dream about them. You'll dream about certain animals, and certain animals will have certain meanings in dreams. And God created them all. And if, things are a reflection of His glory, then there are certain things that we ought to acknowledge about these animals and about how they respond to us and how they respond towards the commands, as it were, that we would be giving, because we've stumbled upon snakes. We've stumbled upon what happens is, as it were, when snakes are commanded to fetch monies, to fetch this, to fetch that. But what about the memory of an elephant? What about the power of a lion? What about the royalty that is represented, as it were, by, I think it's the leopard or the cheetah? Why did we pick those animals? And more broadly speaking, what is the role of those totemic symbols or animals or expressions in spirituality itself? Because they are linked, right? So animals and spirituality are a particular sort of branch that we've got to get into. But we've also got to discuss what it is and what they mean, because you have this thing, right? And these three realms, if you will, air, land, water, have dominion over the birds of the sea, the birds of the air, fish of the sea, and every creeping thing on land. So there are three dominions, as it were. If you take a look at the animals that are printed on most of what we'd call these traditional fabrics, they fit into one of those three. You'd find birds, you'd find big cats, big animals that are land mammals, you'd find some reptiles that, would go into both. Or one thing I haven't actually seen would be fish. I haven't seen a fish as yet that is represented. So things that have got to do with water would be amphibic. So you'd have, as it were, crocodiles you've seen on fabrics. You've seen snakes on fabrics. Those also get into water. But I haven't seen any fish on those fabrics. I haven't seen a wide range of animals. You've seen guinea fowl on the fabrics. You've seen chickens on the fabrics. But why did we pick those particular animals? In terms of perhaps broadening the discussion beyond just snakes, what about these totemic symbols give us this power that, someone would be motswening, motloung, motaung. And these are important. These are important to have the discussion, to understand why is it that, for instance, the tribe of Judah chooses the lion. the lion is a very powerful animal, but for all intents and purposes, it's powerful in certain respects. It's not powerful over everything. It takes a whole bunch of lions to bring down an elephant. So shouldn't it be the elephant? The elephant has memory. The elephant is sort of patient. The elephant has often been a symbol of wisdom for a lot. The elephant is a royal animal in certain respects. People would say Wena Windloaf. So why is it that the Jewish expression translates to Africa? Why is the lion a symbol of authority? And perhaps why is it that the leopard or the cheetah, as it were, is a symbol of royalty? And by so asking, I'm asking the same question perhaps that I'd asked last night, to say, what does it mean? What does it mean for us to be able to have the ability to speak to animals? Because we have the ability to speak to a lot of things, right? If the story of Yeshua is to be believed, he spoke to a fig tree and it never gave fruit again. So we'd have ability to speak to things that are fruitful and stop them from being fruitful. We have the ability to speak to things that are not fruitful and make them fruitful. So there are all these things that are just running through my mind around the conversation around totemic symbols, if you will, or animals and spirituality. What does it mean to be someone that is associated with certain animals? And why did we pick those animals particularly as people? Why do we not see, despite, for instance, the tribe of Bengu being Oshongololo, why do we not see the traditional fabric of the millipede or the centipede, unless they're there and I haven't seen them? We need to explore these questions, because we're using symbols, we're using things that are created. And I do want to say that meaning is created, right? So because meaning is created, things don't have meaning in and of themselves. So we've ascribed these characteristics and we've now created these things. And that really speaks to the power that human beings have and our spiritual nature. But we haven't fully gone in there. We haven't spoken about what it means to move a mountain, much like Christ speaks about. We haven't spoken about what it means for someone to be Noah and to command animals to come into the ark, as it were, right? And we know that this is myth and folklore. It's fine. We can still use the lesson that is there. But what authority did we have? And we see remnants of that authority. We may make jokes of it, but we're able to train dogs to listen. We're able to train cats to listen. People will speak to certain animals that have been tamed, quote unquote. But these were once wild. So when the first human being decides to speak to this animal and tame it, or, bring it into its control, what happens? What happens to the concept of wild cows, for instance? Or were cows always tame? Do we never think about that? Were sheep always tame? Were chickens always tame? The ancestors of these animals, where does that come from? And I think it's important for us to have this conversation, because we've so limited ourselves based on what exists right now that we're willing to forego the idea that there may have been a powerful version of ourselves, a powerful version of humanity that lived beyond the confines of what we see, that tamed horses, that tamed lions, or that tamed elephants, or that tamed whatever the ancestor to the cow is, all throughout civilization, and to bring us to where the cow is now, to bring us to where the sheep are now, to bring us to where goats are now. And if they were able to tame the wild then, if they were leaning on a God-given instruction to say, you have dominion, what stops us now? What stops us now from taming what is around us? And perhaps that's a question that's got to be asked when we're speaking around, people abusing snakes for nefarious reasons. What about the good?